Hello and welcome to another episode of the Leo Alves podcast. And in today's podcast episode, I have a guest who I am very excited to have on with me. His name is Andy Morgan. I'm not going to say too much. I'll let him introduce himself and then we can go from there.
Leo, thank you for having me on. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak to your listeners today.
Yeah, how would you describe yourself, who you are, what you do, maybe a bit of your experience, and then because I know there's tons, and then we can get into the episode.
Sure, so I'm originally from Birmingham, but I've lived in Japan for the last 20 years. I have been in our beautiful fitness industry for the last 14 years of that. I started blogging out of frustration as to what I saw were the rip-offs, the charlatans, the nonsense that was in the industry, and I wanted to help my Japanese friends because I noticed that there was just a dearth of good information available to them, and that's because of the language barrier. So they don't speak English. English is a language of science. Eat your vegetables, eat a good amount of protein, make sure you're training hard. Calories in, calories out, that is the way to control most of this stuff. That information just doesn't get pushed because there's not really the financial incentives to translate that. It's not exciting. And so you just get a lot of supplement marketing, like false claims, the typical fitness industry nonsense. So I just started blogging in English, having that translated into Japanese. And I had a dual language blog for about a year before moving it over to a website name that made sense. Because the website is Ripped Body, but I didn't do any research when I chose the name. Ripped doesn't translate to most Japanese people don't know the word ripped.
Yeah.
And also, even if they did, like torn body, what does that mean, right? So we changed it over to athlete body. So now we've got ripbody.com and athletebody.jp. And now, 14 years later, at first nobody cared because who am I? What credibility do I have? Well, none at all. Why should they listen to me? But we kept on putting out good information, and now we're in a position where we're widely considered to be the most trusted fitness source, fitness website in the country. So that's pretty cool. I like to think we do make a small difference, but the nonsense is still abundant. And we make money from online coaching. And some book sales, and we've partnered up with the guys in the States for Macro Factor. So my company, we bring Macro Factor over to Japan, and we in Japan, our coaching service is targeted towards bodybuilders, physique competitors to help them get better placings. So it's very very niche. It's Today we're going to be talking about the 80/20 of what gets us results. And we're very specifically going to be pulling out things that we can consider minutiae that just don't matter. However, when it comes to our bodybuilding clients, all of the minutiae actually tend to matter because they tend to have all of the other stuff locked in for the most part. And so these can be kind of quite interesting people to work with. My team works with them. Fortunately, I don't have to go into the bodybuilding world. On ripbody.com, most of our clients, I should say, are American, busy working family men. They've been in shape before. Slowly, time has pulled them out of shape, and they want to get it back. Something's happened. They've had a spark. Maybe it was getting on the floor playing with their kids and the knees hurt. And they're like, oh shit. And then they're like, I weigh a bit too much now, don't I? It's like, damn, got to do something about this. Maybe they go to the doctors, they get a bad result. Maybe they go on holiday and they're at the pool. And even though no one's looking at them, they're looking at themselves feeling super self-conscious. Maybe they have just a small comment from their wife. And it's like, that just hits them like a ton of bricks, but they don't say anything because they're a man and they just keep it in, right? But they now want to make a change. They try to make changes. They start going to the gym. They start looking after their diet. They make a little bit of progress, and then progress kind of grinds to a halt. that's kind of where we come in with those people who are feeling a bit stuck and we help them move forward from there. So that's what we've always done. Um, we're 14 years in there. I feel very fortunate to be still loving what we do and loving working with people. It's all one-on-one. It's not group. So I get to know my clients. I've got coaches, some two great coaches that work for me, Sam and Matt. And yeah, it's great. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot, and it's really amazing stuff that you're doing and tons of experience. Um, there's a few things that you said there, and I was like, oh, that's a good point. Like just English being the language of science. Yeah,
Mm,
very good point. Which I guess I never deeply thought about the repercussions of that. Um,
mm,
so that is a really good point because and the reason why I bring this up, and I know we had like a few points that we were discussing to go over beforehand, but there was one thing I actually did come to mind because I lived in Japan for like 15 months between 2020 and 2021. Interesting time to live there. Um, and
yes.
um, and I remember, and this was, I don't know about now, it's been 5 years. I do remember at the time just feeling, okay, when I train at and I trained at many gyms when I was there because I lived in quite a few places. I was moving around um, the country a bit. And I remember looking around and just feeling like, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this. And maybe you could think, no,
Mm.
I don't even agree. But like just looking around and feeling like generally, like your average gym goer has like much worse form here than in like the UK or the US, where I felt like your average gym goer just has like a better idea of just good form. And I noticed a very specific thing to just notice, but it was something I noticed, and it didn't matter where in Japan I went. To be fair, it was all at Anytime Fitness, so that could be some sort of maybe something there. But yeah, I thought that was just really interesting. And if you've maybe noticed something like that, maybe at least a few years ago, or what that might be.
You make an interesting point. Um, I wonder whether that's cultural because um, a lot of the sports practice that everyone will do from school, there will be a very large emphasis on form for everything. So, and that will start right from the warm-ups at the start of the day before school even starts. And so I think people do care about these things. They care about getting it right and looking right when they're doing stuff. And then that leads to them doing things right? Because they want to look right. You might have seen that there's a thing in Japan where people tend to have one hobby and they go all in on that hobby. So you'll probably have seen people who they have all of the gym gear, like everything. They got the gloves, they got the bottle, they got the they got air. They have absolutely everything. Hikers they will be fully kitted out in like 1,000 pounds of gear, right? Which they absolutely don't need because it's just a half day hike, right? They'll have their little bear bell as well, which is unnecessary for the location and the group. But they tend to go all in. So I think that's probably part of it. It's a care for the craft. That and I think we tend to just have bigger egos, and we want to we we want to just sling around some weights at first, generally, until we get injured, and that's when we start to think about form. So I think there are just some interesting cultural differences there that just kind of change things.
Yeah, and I did notice very much what you said about the supplements as well. But I guess that's like in a lot of places too, where in Japan, yeah, there was a lot of very misleading perhaps supplements or tips I'd see around because, like you said, English is predominantly the language of science, and so maybe a lot of things would either just not really get translated well, or they get mistranslated, or probably
It will not
yeah
be translated at
yeah,
all.
or just
Oh,
not be
yeah.
translated at all. So yeah, and yeah, so that's why those initial points came to mind. But yeah, good times. Yeah, I thought we could get stuck. Was there anything else you wanted to mention before I get into the first point?
I think in Japanese they don't want to stick out. Like you walk into an elevator and nobody speaks. Right, and that's because you're always thinking about the group and what's going to be best for the group in that moment. It's called KY, Kukiyomu. And it's very important to read the air, is a literal translation of that, at all times. And so when you walk into an elevator or a train car and everyone's silent despite it being packed, you just won't have that conversation because you're thinking not about what your actions are going to do to everyone else. Part of that is thinking about everybody else. Part of that is also thinking about yourself, and you don't want to stand out. So the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. Like this is a very common phrase in Japan, and people kind of abide by that. So people will look around. They will want to copy what they see. So if they're in an environment where people are really looking after and paying attention to their form, then they'll want to do that. So it probably comes from that as well.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of
Mm.
sense. Yeah, good point. And that kind of nicely takes us onto the next point. Everything we've been discussing was so you've worked with tons of people. Um, what do the ones who achieve their goals do you think tend to do differently?
The consistency over perfection. So um, we have a lot of clients who come to us with issues around, hmm, they tend to know what they need to do. It's just they tend to fall into this all or nothing mindset. And then, let me explain that. They're either 100% on or they're like off, F it. I'm just not going to do it because what's the point? So what this then leads to is just yo-yoing. In the most common example of the the average person's plateau, even the non-gym goer, the person who's just trying to lose weight casually, um, they will keep their diet during the week. They'll drink and eat their face off on the weekends. Net net, it's they end up without that calorie deficit because they've eaten it all back on the weekend, right? Part of that is that they're starving themselves too hard on the weekdays. That's then leading into a binge cycle on the weekends. Part of it is like environmental. Part of there's all sorts of factors that are in here. But let's take it to more of an example of someone who's got their weekends under control now. They're still going to have dinners. Perhaps it's going to be client dinners, dinners with friends. There's going to be some travel, perhaps some work travel, some holidays, vacations, and some people can get into the mindset of, well, okay, I don't have access to my regular gym with my regular equipment, so I'm just not going to train. Which, if you don't train for a few days, a week, 2 weeks, not a big deal. We're the product of our habits, not the occasions. However, when those occasions become frequent, this is when we often get derailed. So people can get themselves in situations where they're like, well, I've got this business trip's coming up and I'm not going to be able to log anything now. I'm not going to be able to look after my diet now. So what is the point? Okay, a glass of wine turns into actually, no, we'll have a bottle of wine or two shared between the two of us over the business dinner or whatever it is. So then, however many calories that is, you're then going to end up having the starter and the dessert. And then maybe you knock on somewhere else and have a couple of whiskeys. That's another bunch of calories that you're smashing down there without really thinking about it. You're going to have that extra like ice cream in. Probably it's going to be a double scoop because, hey, we're on holiday. I'm switching over to vacations now. But what you then end up with is uh, you end up with something like, you know, 200 days on, 165 days off, and it's just not really, you're not going to see enough progress from that. And a lot of people, they just don't have the self-awareness to be able to be like, okay, yeah, actually, that's the reality of me right now. I am actually that 200 day on, 165 day off person. And so kind of helping wake people up to that and then getting them on board with the idea that if you always do what you can when you can, you don't need to have any shame about the times when you weren't perfect and you will actually still make progress towards your goals. Because very often you won't backslide, you just won't make progress for a week perhaps, but you've still kept up your gym, you've still kept up many of your good habits with your nutrition, and so it's way easier to get back in the groove afterwards. So this really is the thing that I'm looking for, and we are trying to guide our clients toward, especially on the RickBody.com side of things, not the bodybuilders. The bodybuilders, they need to go to extremes. and unhealthy behaviors when they get in towards their on-season last 12 weeks. But let's ignore them for a moment and we go for just regular people, right? What we're trying to do is to coach them in a way that sets them up where they leave us, where they don't need us anymore, where they become a walking billboard for our services. That's the goal. So now with that in mind, what are we looking for to when we get them into the right place? It's when they can walk in the gray, where they can avoid this all or nothing mindset, when they can really be okay with not being perfect all the time. We want to help guide them toward that. So, yeah.
Yeah, really good points. I think a lot of people really overlook, for example, like you gave one example of weekends just
Mm.
kind of being a free for all for some people. I think some people think, oh, it's just 2 days a week. I'm really consistent on the
Yeah.
other 5 days. How much of a difference can me not worrying about my nutrition on those 2 days a week really make? And the answer is depending on maybe the extent of it, it could be a huge difference. And I still remember the first time ever I came across someone who it was years ago now, like when I was working in a gym and I would do like these one-to-one meetings that the gym would set up to just like do like a health screening. And I remember someone was just like, Leo, I can't figure it out at all. I don't know why I'm not making progress. I'm super consistent. And after digging into it, yeah, like it was, he just said, yeah, weekends, I don't worry about my nutrition on weekends because I like to use it as a break. And I just thought that was the first example of when I had oh, okay, well, that is it. And since then I've noticed it can be quite common. So yeah, I think a lot of people really overlook that, as you said, and yeah, consistency over the long term is what matters the most. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, yeah, we can. I think we can put a bit of math on this just to help people out a little bit. So let's say you want to lose a pound a week or half a kilo a week, roughly. Then you need approximately a 500 calorie deficit. I'm sure you've talked about this before, but we'll just elaborate on the math. So that means you need a 3,500 calorie deficit for the week. Okay. Now let's say that Monday to Friday, we're ignoring Friday nights here, which may catch some people out. But let's say you're even perfect on your Friday night, right? Or we'll swap that Friday night for a Sunday. So we just got 2 days of the week where you're shit. Yeah. So Monday to Friday, you're perfect. Okay. So you're 2,500 calories in a deficit now for the week. Great. Your target is 3,500, but that's still good. Okay. You're now 5/7 of the way to losing a pound of fat or half a kilo of fat. That's wonderful. But then on the weekend, oh, and let's say that for you, let's say that you are a smaller than average person with lowish activity levels. You may need to eat 2,000 or 1,500 calories a day. Let's go to the shorter person with lowish activity levels because they're an office worker who trains 3 days a week, who's a woman. Um, they may, and they might be walking, say, 4 to 5,000 steps a day only. They may, to have a calorie deficit, they may need to go down to 1,500 calories. They may. Okay. Doesn't mean they're broken. It's just they may actually have to get down that low in order to lose that weight. Now, weekend comes along, right? They go out with everybody else. They go out and they order fixed portion size meals, right? Because it's not like, oh, you're a small person, you have a smaller meal. No, we order what is there. And it's almost always too much. Yeah. And they've also said, well, it's the weekend. I've been so good during the week, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Right. So then they go and they order, instead of having their 1,500 calories a day, they'll be like, okay, I'll skip breakfast. And then I'll have a lunch and a dinner. And that lunch will be 1,500 calories. The dinner will be 1,500 calories, and we're not even including the alcohol here because, they've had that lunch. Maybe there's some fried food there. The portion's just generally too large. Maybe they've had like a latte as well. Boom, 1,500 calories. Dinner is as well. That's 3,000 calories. 3,000 calories again on a Sunday. Well, now we're 3,000 calories over. You were in a 2,500 calorie deficit up until that point. Well, now you're plus 500, right? Which is not enough to make it like it's only a 100-gram difference. So you're not actually going to notice this on the scale, but you've now screwed it. It's just as simple as that. And so you do unfortunately have to be mindful. It doesn't mean you've got to be perfect at all times, but you've got to be mindful of what you're eating. And the other thing that comes along and F's people up real bad is that your Sunday, you're now weighing your worst, right? Because some people they'll weigh themselves afterwards and start feeling a bit guilty. Monday, they're like, oh, damn, I'm 80K now, for example, right? 180 pounds, let's say. It's like, oh, I was 77 at the start of last week, right? So like 7 pounds lighter. Then their weight gradually dips down 3 kilos over the week. And then come the weekend and boom, they gain the 3 kilos back. In their minds, they've gained 3 kilos of fat. In reality, what they've done is the half a kilo of fat that they're about to burn off has actually just been put back on. And the rest of it is just this gut content, water, weight, and glycogen, which is the carbohydrate stored in your muscles and liver as an energy source from the carbs. That's all the weight difference that's gone on. But people then get in this roller coaster. They do the weekends. They think, I've messed everything up. I've gained 3 kilos of fat, and then they just carry on, and it ends up getting into cycles.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And it's common, and especially the type of the avatar that you're going for, like that's a very common one as well, where yeah, and shorter people, generally the shorter you are, the tougher it can be to
yeah,
try and stay in a calorie deficit, especially because as you said, portion sizes, for example, when we eat out, which in today's day and age, yeah, many people are doing, it's always catered to it's just one portion, as you said, it's one size. Everyone gets the same thing. And
mm,
I'm sure you know Mike Dola.
mhm, yeah,
Yeah, and I remember I had him on the podcast one time, and this is kind of staying the course, kind of going off subject, but I remember he was saying that it was that same specific point as to why he often found that people would have a really hard time, and he found that it was specifically husbands that would often want to eat out. They would say, "Oh, I don't want you to worry. I want you to enjoy yourself. Come and have this meal with me," and they can still eat out and not even have hit their maintenance calories. Meanwhile, maybe if you're someone who's very short, physical activities on the lower side, you're a short lady. That one meal that your husband also had could be you over maintenance now all of a sudden, and
mm,
so it's just yeah, it's a very common thing. Did you want to mention anything else before I actually go on to the
yeah,
next
yeah.
one?
Yeah,
Correct.
absolutely. You make a great point. That like the thing is, we have it. Well, not all of us, but many of us were told as kids, by very well-meaning parents, eat your food, clean your plate. If you don't, you're bad. Okay. So what that does is, yes, it teaches you to value your food, but you then end up with hang-ups that if you don't clean your plate, you're a bad person and it's rude. When I would say no, it's not. If you don't clean your plate, you're sending a signal back to the kitchen that actually this was too large of a portion, so then they can have less food waste later on. That's one. Maybe they adjust their portion sizes. Two, you eating all of your food isn't now pleasing your mum, right? It doesn't matter anymore. You're now an adult. So get over it, right? It's also not a waste of money. There's this sunk cost fallacy we have. It's not a waste of money. No, the waste would be if you, by eating all of the food on your plate, then bust your diet. Well, that helps absolutely no one, does it? But we find it exceptionally hard to just, when we're served a meal, be like, that's too big. Get the knife, push like a third of it to one side because no, that's too much. And then you just eat the other and you leave it. We find that exceptionally hard. So if you know that you're not going to be able to do that, and you can try, just don't give up before you try. But if you know that you're not going to be able to do that, then the battle is won or lost in what you choose on the menu from the start, right? And often if you're in that situation, it may be the case that it's best that you split a meal or and then you have like, I don't know, a chicken breast at home or yogurt or something else, a high protein snack, just to top up your protein levels, right, without busting through your calorie budget. Or when you order, you say, "Can I have half the fries that you normally put on there?" Right, which no one thinks to do, but they're not going to say no to it, are they? So, you know, yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? You brought up something that I've never actually thought about before until now. Um, and it's just more like as you mentioned, when we grow up, parents always like come and eat, like clean your plate. You have to eat everything, or you're not going to go outside and play. Yeah,
Mm.
I would say that's definitely a thing. And as with many people, I did want to ask, and this is probably the first time I've ever thought about it. Like, do you feel like maybe you're not certain? Do you feel like this is also a thing in Japan? And the reason why I asked this is because I suddenly had a flashback when you said that to one of my friends out there back in like 2021. She was saying, "Oh, I remember when I was a kid and I was growing up, my parents, they would make me like try and finish my food by saying each grain of rice." And I don't know if she meant this was like a general thing, like across the country, or it was just her, was a god, and you had to, you couldn't leave any behind, so you had to eat every single grain, and that was just something they used to tell her as a kid. Would you say that's really a thing there, or not so much?
I don't know about that specific
Specifically?
com specifically.
Yeah.
However, it's very common for not a single grain to be left, and that is considered good manners. The difference in Japan is we don't have an obesity problem in a large part, I would say. And you could say, oh yeah, Asian genetics, blah 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 blah. Okay, all right,
People always
fair
say
enough.
that.
Fine, sure, fine. I understand. Like, I understand. However, portion sizes are a lot smaller, and people walk a lot more. And you put those two things together, and so it just makes a massive difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a post. I've reposted this as well, and every time it's done really well on Threads specifically. And it was like, all right, I lived in Japan for 15 years. Here's like 7 reasons why I feel like, from based on what I saw there, Japan's obesity rate is like as low as it is, and why its life expectancy is high as it is. And I
Mm,
mentioned both things that you mentioned,
mm.
walking, portion sizes, different foods on like little different plates help you pace yourself a little bit. I also find that like generally across the board, like compared to Western countries, they also like drink a lot less of their calories. Usually the options are like loads of different flavored teas, which helps because 0 calories, and yeah,
Yeah.
and I'd mention a few other things. Um but then there would always be people in the comments like, oh, but Asian genetics, almost like they wanted to ignore everything else. And yeah, so I was just like, what can I say? Some people, I guess, don't really want to hear.
You can lead a donkey to water, but you cannot make a donkey drink, right?
Yeah.
Or
Um,
no, actually, that's a little bit rude. Let's scratch that one. When the student is ready, the teacher appears, Leo. Maybe that's the better one,
yeah, wise
right?
words.
Some people, they're always just going to find an excuse, and some people are just shitheads who want to rustle up, people in the comments, right? And okay, you could say that they have an argument there, but that's just not helpful because you can't change your genetics. So if you want to focus on that and throw yourself a pity party, the only question is, how long are you going to be in that pity party for? Right? If it's going to be your whole life, then, good luck to you. But like, cry it out and then let's get on with it and figure out what your actual options are given your body, your current circumstances, your current environment, your budget, and your situation regarding whether you walk, bike, commute by car or train or whatever, right? How can we figure this all out together? And some of that is going to need to be conversations with friends and loved ones, etc. Getting a bit off tangent, but yeah, like, yeah.
No, very well said. And I think this brings me actually up nicely to the next point that I had in mind. So, and
Mm,
you know what, some of the people like we kind of touched upon there could very well fit this category. Like, I feel like a lot of people say they've tried quote unquote everything and nothing's
mm.
worked. I would say, based on your experience, what's usually, because I'm sure it does depend on the person, but what would you say are the common reasons why, or the real reasons why they're potentially not seeing the results that they want to see?
Generally they're eating more than they think, and they're burning fewer calories than they think. When they say they've tried everything, it means that they've tried a lots of different diets that have a name. Generally, diets that have a name should be avoided because they've got lots of different arbitrary food restrictions on them. And what do I mean? Like a paleo diet, a ketogenic diet, a vegan diet. That's not a judgment on vegans, but people who jump to veganism because they think that's going to help them get skinny. Now, of course, like Doritos are vegan and they can label them as vegan. And so now, it's lost its meaning of like eating a lot of vegetables and just generally very healthy stuff, right? It's kind of lost its way, unfortunately. Or like take another extreme reaction to that, like a carnivore diet, like lots of meat and lots of fatty meat, right? So they think that they've tried everything and it's just not for them. But actually, they haven't ever really tracked their calories like rigorously. And so they weren't really quite aware of how much they were screwing things up without knowing it. And that's understandable because even, there's research showing that even like registered dietitians screw up their calorie counting to an enormous degree. So, yeah, I would say it really it comes down to that. That plus let's say they do weigh themselves and they're using scale weight in the mirror as their main gauge of progress and maybe how their genes fit. I'd say how your genes fit if you've got a fairly tight pair of jeans is a great way of going by it, but you've got to acknowledge that you're gonna blow up at some points, especially women at certain points during the month, right? But this is why we get all clients to take body measurements, multiple places on the stomach, but um, the these fluctuations in their weight more often than not catch people out because they can't get it out of their heads thinking that this is sudden fat regain. When the reality is that, to lose a kilo of fat requires a three and a half, sorry, a 7,700 calorie deficit, right? You would need to go and run like 2 marathons or something like that to burn that much and not eat anything that day. Yeah, you would pass out before that. You cramp up in pain. Okay, not if you're like an absolute, like if you're David Goggins, but you're just not going to burn that. So why do you think that when you have a bad weekend, you've suddenly gained like 3 kilos of fat? You didn't. It's mainly this water gut content glycogen that nobody talks about. People get confused and they're like, shit, I've just messed it all up. Well, to hell with it. And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they're just like, they get into a bad cycle of a cascade of bad choices, I call it. And then by Thursday, they're feeling like, sorry for themselves. They're like, oh shit, I really need to get back on. And then they start the diet again. So it's this like, this fluctuation and confusion about what is actually happening, plus never having actually properly tracked, because they were doing all of these named diets, fad diets, we would call them. I think that's a bit mean. I think that these people who promote them tend to be quite predatory and they push out a lot of pseudoscience because their wallets depend on it, their bank accounts depend on it, unfortunately. But that tends to be the truth of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think yeah, you nailed it. And there's a lot I can say there as well. I think, as you said, all very common reasons, especially the just not having tracked one to any, or like maybe they have tracked, but it was extremely loosely and only on days where it was convenient. And I think that's a wake up call. And
Mm,
oftentimes people maybe feel like they did track and but it just wasn't anywhere near as accurate as it needed to be. And sometimes they swear they've done everything. And oftentimes like they feel like calorie tracking didn't work, but it's just like you said, they're overlooking maybe like oils and sauces and calories from drinks that they wouldn't have accounted for. So it's not even like they're lying. I think most of the time it's just like genuine unawareness. And just yeah, bringing that awareness can really help things. And yeah, I also find that from my experience, like just people can't get it out their head when they've got sometimes like when they've been like doing so well and then suddenly they see a scale weight fluctuation. Yeah, they think they've just messed things up. Where it's like, no, you're fine. And oftentimes
yeah.
that's never the issue. It's how they always react to it, which either can make it an issue or it ends up being nothing. Yeah,
Yeah. Keep
yeah.
calm, carry on. That's all you got to do. You just in the same way you didn't suddenly gain a bunch of muscle, you didn't suddenly gain a bunch of fat, right? It's and the all of the reverse. Don't get too excited as well when you start a diet. A lot of that is going to be losses of water, gut content, and glycogen. Okay, gut content. Why? Because you're eating less, right? So you got less food and poop in your gut, right? It makes sense, right?
Yeah.
People forget. They
Yeah.
panic.
And if someone's listening to this right now and they're thinking, okay, so if it's not carnivore, if it's not keto, if it's not any of what they're saying, I've been struggling for a while. I really just don't know what to do. You guys sound like you know what you're talking about. What's let's like if we could give them like that person like just one easy to implement like nutrition tip that would really make a difference. Like what would you say is one nutrition tip that almost sounds too simple to be true, but works really well in a day-to-day life that that person could potentially implement, the listener right now?
Oh, there's so many. If you let's bang through a few. Okay. If you wind down at the end of the day by having Doritos or a whiskey or something like that in the evening, you need to cut that habit because that can really be the difference between slowly you gaining weight or actually managing to lose weight and getting much better shape for a good long time. Um, if someone's looking, thinking like, okay, well, what might my meals need to look like? Like, if we really strip back and think, okay, what do I need to do? You don't need a red light sauna. You don't need like red light blocking glass, yeah, if blue light blocking glasses. You don't need to have a morning ice bath and write a journal and have your greens supplement after you've got out of your 8 sleep bed and have a perfect 30 grams of high quality, fast digesting whey isolate.
Grass-fed.
Exactly. Yeah, grass fed, of course. No. Let's strip it back. Okay. What is the 80/20 of the 80/20? What is the 96 for here, right? It is consider having to wild thing here. Consider skipping breakfast if you're trying to create a calorie deficit. Consider skipping breakfast. You'll get used to it, don't worry, within a week. Have a lunch, have a dinner. Make your lunch and your dinner have a palm-sized piece of lean meat or fish. With that, have one fist of starchy carbohydrates and have 2 fists of vegetables and maybe some lowish calorie sauce with that. Now the it could be pasta, it could be potatoes, it could be rice, it could be bread. It doesn't matter. But if you have those 2 solid, fairly filling meals because you've got so many vegetables in there, right? It could be a bowl of salad, frankly, with a non-oily dressing. This is going to keep you full for fairly long. The protein, that palm-sized portion, is probably going to get you up to about 2/3 of what you need, of what would be ideal for the day. And just like a whey shake or a low fat Greek yogurt, and you're pretty much good to go. That's going to sort out a lot of people. Is that interesting? No, it's not the most interesting, but it's definitely a good, simple, unscrew-upable place to start that's sure to work for most people. And then from there, you can build out more variety. But if you're looking at like you've been struggling, you haven't been making the progress you wanted, that bare bones framework and then iterating from there, I'd say is the way to go.
Yeah. It's yeah, all very and the thing is, I know some people would hear that and think, yeah, that's way too simple. That's definitely not gonna work. Something like that, where it's like, no, really, like it's because I think a lot of people, like you said, just expect these really just absurd, sometimes hardcore rules with their diet, like don't eat any fruits, don't eat any vegetables, only eat
Huh.
meat, or
Mm,
something wild like that. And
okay.
and then really, when you peel it down, it's like what you said can just work amazingly.
Yeah, and like you've also got to consider what I didn't say. What I didn't say there was like about the other color. Like I'm assuming here that you're not now having your grande frappuccino, right? That's now got 800 calories in there, which you're forgetting about, right? You're now going to have a black coffee with a bit of sugar. I'm sorry, a bit of the sweetener and some regular low-fat milk, let's say, right? So you've swapped that out. So now you've gone from 800 calories to about 30 calories because of the milk. Okay, happy days, right? You've just made a massive difference. And then I'm saying I'm assuming that you're not going to have other snacks and the alcohol, and but I'm not saying that you have to absolutely have to not do these things. It's just if we keep it super simple and think what could it look like? Well, it could look like that.
Yeah, yeah,
This is a start.
yeah. And we've spoken a lot about nutrition. Um, and I think this
Mhm.
nicely brings up training. Like sometimes it's these like more simpler routines that also can work amazingly. So like
Mm,
if we were to then get into the conversation of like working out at the gym, strength training, like let's say for someone strength training 2 to 3 times a week, what do you think, in your opinion, would be like a smart, effective workout routine to follow? What would it maybe look like? Uh,
mm.
generally speaking, of course.
So sure. So let's take the opposite of that. What would be perhaps a fun workout? Actually, I hate the word workout. Training program, right? We're not working out, we're training. What's the difference? One's for fun, the other one is we're training for an effect, right? It's planned, it's purposeful. Um, what would be a training program that definitely wouldn't work in this case? It would be a 5 day body part split. What am I talking about? Monday, International Chest Day. Everybody knows Chest Day Monday, yeah? Then Tuesday, you're now doing back. Wednesday, you're doing your arms. Thursday, you're doing your legs. Friday, you're doing shit, I forgot one, but you know what I'm
Shoulders.
saying here.
That's
Thank you.
right, yeah.
Shoulders. Jesus, like forgot the shoulders. So that wouldn't work. Why? Because you've only got 2 to 3 days. So then you're going to end up choosing, obviously, chest and arms, right? And maybe you're going to put back in there. And it's just you haven't quite got balance. Okay. So we have to set things up in a way that you can sustain. What is going to work if you've only got 2 to 3 days a week? And some days it's some weeks it's two, some weeks it's three. It's going to be a full body training program. So you're training all your body every time you train. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, I just can't do that because I train legs once a week. And even then, I'm sore for days afterwards. It's like, yeah, I understand. You get used to it. You just get used to it. The more you do it, the quicker you just get used to it. And then the soreness ends up becoming a non-issue. So you just need to get over the hump and train frequently and go start light. So then if we think, shall I cover what a training plan might look like in very simple terms?
Yeah, 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 you could. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so think of your body or think of your training in terms of the primary movement patterns. Let's think of four of them. We have pushing, pulling, squatting, and picking heavy shit up off the floor. Okay, that's we call that one a hip hinge. So think of a deadlift, right?
That's less cool.
When it, yeah, yeah, less cool, well, very cool, but still, yeah. So the pushing and the pulling, we can split those. So into horizontal and vertical pushes and horizontal and vertical pulls. So a horizontal push is a bench press, for example. A horizontal pull would be a row. A vertical pull would be a chin up or a lat pull down. And a vertical push would be a barbell overhead press, dumbbell overhead press, etc. Right? Any kind of shoulder press, vertical press. And you can now take those six and you could have 6 exercises of any of your choosing that you like, so like enjoy, so that you enjoy doing, that cause you no pain through a full range of motion or as full of a range of motion as possible, that you can do safely and comfortably, and that you can push hard with. Now, for many of us, that means we can do almost any exercise. But for some of us, we've squatted for a while and we found that barbell squats just mess us up for some reason. It's like, damn, barbell back squats, they're out. Maybe you've also tried front squats. And once you got over the initial soreness on your clavicles, yeah, no, they just didn't work for you either. Your lower back just hurt for some reason. Damn. Shit, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? Ah, leg press. Maybe you do the leg press. Great. What is that? That's a squat. Cool. So you do the leg press instead. Maybe that doesn't work for you. So you do the hack squat machine. Cool. Do that. No worries at all. Maybe that doesn't work for you. So you do single leg Bulgarian split squats with dumbbells in each arm. Great. Wonderful. Right. It doesn't matter. Just choose one that you can repeat. And your Monday, your day one and day two could be the same, or they could be different exercises. It really, for the most part, doesn't matter. But the more training experience you have, generally, the more variety, the better. The more less training experience you have, the newer you are to an exercise, the more benefit there is to repeating that frequently.
Mm. Yeah, yeah,
That's how I do it.
yeah. And yeah, that would work fantastically for someone in their earlier days, just getting started out or looking to get started. Um, yeah, I think a lot of people really overlook. I think a lot of people really overlook full body workouts as well. At least judging from yeah, just my life experience and even posts I'll make online. I remember one time I put like something about full body workouts just being overlooked a lot, and there's actually they can
Mm.
actually be really good. And it was like a lot of like it was mostly like newbies or like really hardcore bros, like who are like, you sound like a CrossFitter, ha ha ha. And I was
Mm.
just like, I think this kind of proves my point, but ironically, but yeah, I think, and truth be told, it was something I used to overlook when I was first getting started. But yeah, there is a lot of value there over what. And maybe you'll have a reason for this. I think sometimes people often gravitate towards a bro split, as it's informally called, or body part split when they start out. Like that just seems to be a very common go-to for people. It was my first one, when I
Mhm.
started out years ago, and why? I probably could think of why. Maybe you have your reasons, but I'm not certain.
I think it's easier to picture what you're training that day, and it can be fun. Like, okay, I've got an arms day, right? Cool, cool. Yeah, I've got a chest day. That's cool. And also, like the bodybuilders that we would have looked up to in the day would have, not all, but many of them would have done that. So we're like, okay, well, they're massive. I want to be massive. Um, we will do what they're doing, right? I think as simple as that.
Yeah. No,
But but I will say, look at the average. Well, there are no average IPF powerlifters, but look at look, look at the IPF powerlifters, right? So these are the or any national level powerlifters who compete in a weight class, right? Meaning they have to diet down, right? Generally speaking, right? Do they look shabby? Right? Would you be happy looking like them? Obviously, we're looking at an extreme outlier, but the point I want to make here is they, most of them got that way through lifting very similarly to full body workouts. Now, there's a little bit of nuance there, but many of them will have squat, bench, and deadlifted or variants of for years, most training sessions. That is a full body workout. And look how jacked they got. Yes, you could say these are the genetic outliers. Cool, sure. But don't don't hmm, don't look at that and just dismiss it outright. I'd say like there is something to it.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, for sure. Um, Was there, because I know we're coming up to an hour now, and I know we had more things to
It's
speak
okay.
about,
It's
but
okay.
oh yeah, it's
We
okay.
can carry on chatting, yeah.
Okay,
Mm.
okay, yeah, okay. Yeah, because we've been going down some cool rabbit holes, but I thought, was there anything else you wanted to bring up before I actually go on to the next point?
Um, uh, don't train through pain. You can always find a way around things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think yeah, through pain, definitely a big no-no. Um how do you like, and I think this brings up a overall, actually, you know what? The fact that you brought up pain actually brings up this really good next point. So like let's say how do you keep track clients on track when life throws a curveball, and this could be, injuries as you just said, or work stress or travel or family issues. And I know I mentioned quite a few points, and we're going to have to keep it general here to suit the listener. But yeah, what's
Sure.
some good
There's
points?
a client I was speaking to on Monday. He's in the States. He's in Silicon Valley. He has a company. He's got quite a lot of employees. The last 2 months, things have been particularly hard with work. We have reduced his training from 4 days. Actually, we have taken his training from 4 days to 5 days, but reduced the amount of volume in half so that he's just able to have very quick sessions because he's got a home gym. But even if you just had a gym close to your work, this can still work. So we've cut the volume in half, and he's no longer aiming to lose fat. We're just aiming for maintenance. And so he's now able to eat like 700 calories more each day, and this is just helping him a lot. Many people would be like, oh, well, I can't diet. What's the point in continuing the coaching? Well, this is exactly the point where you want to have it because it's going to stop you from going off of the rails in a time where everything else is feeling outside of your control, but this one thing is. But we're not going to do it in a way that's going to exacerbate the stress that you're under. So we're purposefully bringing your calories up, reducing his training stress down. We increase the number of training days so that he could have a sense of an anchor on all of his days of the work week, so that this is his anchor in the storm, so that he keeps up his habits and his momentum. But it isn't too taxing and it doesn't take too much of his time. So, how do we help them? it it really depends on the person, but meeting them where they're at usually and helping them modify.
Yeah. And so let's say someone who does get these someone like everyone does get these things happen to them, like whether it's work stress, travel, family issues. And this might end up echoing a bit of what we said already earlier, but let's say someone who maybe isn't lucky enough to have Andy Morgan as their coach. Um, what would you say maybe, and they start self-sabotaging every time this happens. Every time it comes up, they're like, oh, you know what? I'm not even going to worry about anything. I'm just going to pick it up again in 2 or 3 months down the line. What would you say to someone who constantly self-sabotages once they start doing well, and then again something like that pops up?
But like, it's okay. You don't have to be perfect at all times. Don't like if you're feeling shit because you keep doing that, like just let go of it. Like, you got a relative in hospital, you're having to go every day, look after them. Like, fuck, it doesn't matter if you're temporarily like out of shape or not getting towards where you want to be. That's fine. Right? There are more important things. Unless your health is literally at risk, right? There are more important things. And most of us, we're not in that position.
Hmm.
But like
Yeah.
at a point where you identify that actually, no, I do want to make a change. This is a problem. Okay, now it comes down to, okay, well, what can we do to create, um, to help us walk this grey, to help us not fall into this all or nothing trap? What are our options here? Is it having an awkward conversation with a loved one or with your family? What's where you're going to have to ask them to help you stay on track? Where you're going to have to say, look, I need to stop having these Uber Eats nights. I want us to start cooking together as a family because it's also going to help me with this and it's probably going to make things less stressful overall. I'm going to feel less shit about myself. It could be putting an hour in the calendar at the end of the week where they sit down, they write down what it is they need to shop for, and they do that shop online so they don't have to spend an hour in the supermarket or an hour and a half in total getting there, getting back. And then what they have in the fridge, that is what they eat. And so now the simplest option and the fastest option is literally just reaching for that ready meal and yogurt or whatever it is in the fridge so that they can't really mess up as long as they don't hit that Uber Eats app or go down to the corner shop or whatever it is, or open the whiskey cabinet, you know what I mean. Um, Really, it's about helping craft your environment in a way where you're set up for success on your worst days, rather than having everything in set up in a way where it only works on your best days.
Yeah. And would you say that like the first thing you said to my question was, something along the lines of just understanding that it's fine to
Mm.
maybe, these things pop up, it's fine. Understanding that is okay. Maybe consistency isn't going to be as high as it usually would be, or as maybe where you want it to be. But the important thing is you figure out ways around that and you keep doing your best and have these anchor points. Would you say that's maybe one of the biggest things that you have to help people unlearn, just realizing that it's not the end of the world when these things pop up? Or would you say maybe there's other things instead that are more common that you have to help people unlearn when they perhaps start out with you?
We always tend to hammer home this let's avoid this all or nothing pattern and get past that, get through that. Um, yeah, so that is a big thing. Is it the biggest? I'm not sure, but it's certainly a big thing, yeah. And the other thing to think of, like, you might look at yourself in the mirror and think, oh man, I haven't been training as much as I wanted, and I haven't been eating as well as I wanted the past 2 months, and I look shit. You might notice a difference, nobody else will. Not not really, right? Because you're not going to have done that much in a couple of months, though, typically, right? And then when you walk into the gym and you're feeling like, oh no, I'm not in the right shape now. Like nobody else in the gym's looking at you and cares what you look like. They all care about what they look like. And actually, the most insecure person in the gym is going to be the biggest, leanest guy there, or the biggest, leanest girl there, right? These are like, because they've had a bad week and they're now, oh, I look terrible. But actually, like, if you had a vote in the gym, a silent ballot, like everyone would choose them, right, as still looking the best, even though they're thinking that they look the worst. So
Yeah.
just also recognizing that just no one really cares. You're the one that cares.
Yeah, it's that probably surprises some listeners in regards to the biggest person often feeling like that, but from my experience, it's often true as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're the worst. And part of it is also like there is a reason that they've decided to go to the extremes that they have, and it's because for many of them they have these insecurities.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, well, that could be a whole other podcast episode.
I
Um,
think we could.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the final question that I had in mind today before I wind it down, what's one thing most people overcomplicate in their fitness journey that really doesn't need to be that hard? And again, it might echo some of what we've discussed earlier. Maybe it could bring up something new, but in your opinion, what would you say?
I've got written down fat loss here just generally. It it, it can be it can be as simple as we've been saying. The difficulty is in crafting your environment, getting everybody on board, um, committing to that, having some kind of accountability. If you have a gym buddy, that can be very helpful because on your day where you're not feeling like it, you'll still want to turn up for them. And when they're not feeling like it, they'll still want to turn up for you. And sometimes you'll both be feeling not that great, but you'll both still turn up anyway and then feel fantastic afterwards that you did. And that's going to set up your day for a great day after that. So finding accountability and having a gym buddy. When it comes to your nutrition, maybe stating publicly what it is that you're doing and why it's important. So you've got some form of accountability there. It could be hiring a coach. Let's not pretend that a large part of the value that our clients get from us isn't just the accountability piece. Because, often clients will say, okay, this is what happened this last couple of weeks. This is what I think I need to improve. This is what I'm seeing. What do you think? And we're like, yep, 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 that's exactly right. One small thing. Have you thought of this? And yep, go ahead and do that. Right. And the fact that they know that they have to come in and check to us is what keeps them on point, right? Because they don't want to feel silly when they check in. It's like, did you do the thing? No, I didn't do the thing, right? This is just a very powerful thing in the accountability there. So finding some way to have accountability as well, and then
Yeah.
just letting the rest of the like the dickheads. Excuse my language. Sorry for anyone in the car with kids. These people like these d heads in the industry, just melt away. Just don't listen to them. Any extremes, people who speak with language which like 100% certitude in their words, they never caveat what they say, just ignore them, right? Because unfortunately, the algorithm just picks up these sound bites and these extreme examples, and it leads to just our feeds being populated by absolute nonsense.
Yeah. I I think like you said a lot, you know what? I think so many people overlook how powerful accountability can be. And it really can be the difference maker as well. 100% agree. See it firsthand all the time. Um, yeah, it's just I think if that's one thing, like for someone maybe who does struggle to stay consistent, if you can just find someone to keep you accountable more, that can really make a big difference. And yeah, what you said as well about just online and being mindful of who you're consuming information from, because you know what, this was actually just a quick side tangent, and you can like feel free to answer this in just a sentence or two. Would you say it's easier now, or would you say it's tougher for someone to get started with their health and fitness now, or maybe let's say 15 years ago before like, or 20 years ago before like TikTok and YouTube was just getting started out about 20 years ago, I think. Or then because from one side you've got more information than ever, which makes it easier to learn these things. But on the other side, for someone who's getting started out, they don't know what's good and bad advice, so they can end up learning. Well, because I just had someone in my comments the other day vouching for carnivore and keto, and they said it was because they've been doing years of research, and this is where it's taken them to understand that this is like the best diet for people. And I was just like,
Mhm.
yeah,
I think the industry's split into more factions now, and those factions tend to be stronger and hold stronger beliefs. And unfortunately, we have a bias towards the information that we find first. And so we need to go through, typically, if we find some poor information first, like a lot of pain before we realize that actually that was kind of nonsense. I know I did. Um, and is it easier? Technically, it should be, but it really comes down to whether they follow the right people. If you're on YouTube and you want to follow someone great, Jeff Nippard, wonderful. Um, Start and stop there. Done. Um, like, if you want to read super geeky but great, again, articles, Stronger by Science. Um, if you want to listen to a podcast that isn't going to send you down a garden path, this one, obviously, right?
thank you.
Um, if you want to read slightly less geeky articles focused on the super practical how, whens, and whats, that's what I've focused on, and that's how we've attracted clients. That's over on ripbody.com. Um, and it once you've once you've got the medium that you learn from, I would just suggest, I'd just say to people, be careful of overcomplicating things by consuming too much. Like consuming more isn't going to help you once you've got the basics locked. down.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just what tends to catch people out as well when they get a little bit too keen and they start adding more and more things in, and then everything becomes unsustainable and overwhelming.
Yeah. And I know your articles are really high quality. That's your main thing, right? Writing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm a
Yeah.
writer. Yeah.
Yeah, so absolutely check out Andy's articles. Um, yeah, I got lucky with the first person I found. I think when I first started, when I was like 17 years old, I just came across Alan Aragon on
Did
bodybuilding.com.
you?
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
I remember on the old like bodybuilding.com stuff, way before it's like what it is now. And I just remember hearing him and thinking, I don't know anything, but that sounds like it's right. Yeah, so yeah, I got lucky with finding him. But yeah, thank you, Andy. Thank you so much for coming on. Was there anything else from our entire podcast episode that we maybe discussed that you wanted to go deeper in on, or you wanted to mention that we maybe didn't bring up that you want to say quickly now, or
No, I
no?
just thank you for having me on and thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate it. And yeah, good luck. And if you have any questions, like I've been answering the comments every day, except weekends and national holidays, for 14 years. So that's like 20,000 plus. And you'll see that I treat people really well. So, if you want to pop over and ask a question, you're more than welcome. I answer them all. It gives me ideas for how I can improve my writing, make more articles, etc. So yeah, uh, don't be shy about that.
And on that note, where's the best place for people to find you?
Yeah, just ripbody.com.
Ripbody.com. Okay,
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
hyperlink that in the show notes of this podcast episode so you can check it
great.
out. And Andy,
Thank
again,
you.
thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. I appreciate it.